Woo! The Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow. Well, we can just stop there. Here for a little Wednesday Q&A. And, of course, this week we also have, that being tomorrow, after this is recorded. So, well, yeah. So today is July 12th, 2017. On July 13th, 2017, Thursday, the day after this gets released, will be the live Q&A hangout. And as usual, if you're listening to this on the day of release, I put out about an hour before the hangout, I put out the links via Patreon. So you want to keep an eye on either your Patreon app, on the Patreon site, or your email, where you also receive, emails from Patreon to be a part of that. So looking forward to that. Going to be a lot of fun. So you're going to get an episode like every day this week. Oh wait, did I release one on Monday? I don't recall. Oh no, I announced that the hangout would be on Monday. So there's going to be a Patreon release of some kind, I guess, every day this week, something like that. Regardless, let's get into this week's Q&A. We've got a lot of great questions to get into. Some of them actually come from the Sovereign Tech Facebook group, which, by the way, if you still want to join the Sovereign Tech Uncensored Facebook group, it is not Patreon. It's not patrons only. Anybody can be in on it. I talked about it last week. I talked about it as well as on last week's Q&A. I talked about it on the Sovereign Tech Prime episode. I explained the logic, the reasoning behind the creation of it, and why I'm not making it a patron perk. But, as you are a patron, all the more, you're all the more welcome, I assure you. So, but make no mistake, like I said previously, if I decide to block somebody, patron or not, they're going to get blocked. But that's why it's not a patron perk, because, I don't want people controlling my shit, for whatever reason. So anyway, you have to become Facebook friends with me. You just go to facebook.com/Brian Sovereign, and then I can add you to the secret group, Sovereign Tech Uncensored, if you want to be a part of it. I already have over 100 people. I expect quite a bit more eventually, once kind of the word gets out. Usually when you're talking about something, I have advertisers and all this, it can take, so I know in the past when I've done advertising, kind of the logic in the ad biz is that it can take up to 3 months, or it can take a month to 2 months really for a message to finally sink into, say, a listener's head, if it was like radio. And then that third month is finally when you start to see sort of the payoff of these things. So it can take time. People got to kind of get, quote unquote, I don't like to use this term, but, beat over the head with it before they, finally realize that it's there and they want to use it. So with that in mind, I'll bring up the Facebook group here and there, and I expect over time, it's only been out for a week or two at best. So yeah, it'll take time for everybody to get on board with it. And honestly, if everybody doesn't get on board with it, that's great too. I have no problem with it. So anyway, a couple of questions actually do come from the Sovereign Tech Facebook group, but I know that they're patrons as well, so I'll answer it here. But before I get into that, speaking of a patron who has been doing a lot of great work, that being, his name is Aaron. I'll just say that he's a patron. You'll see him around. He kind of operates the RetroShare setup that we have for Sovereign Tech and for patrons only. The RetroShare setup is like all of the content, or at least a lot of the content, and eventually all of it. I certainly have some work to do on that myself. But the content that I discuss, that I review, that I talk about, even the music, whatever, all ends up in this RetroShare, community that we're trying to build here. And you can get access to it and you can download it. RetroShare, if you don't know about RetroShare, well, here's the beauty of it, okay? And there's a link in the show notes for this episode. All right, this will be episode 107, Your Questions, Brian's Answers, episode 52. There's a link in the show notes where you can watch a Facebook video made by Aaron that will, that describes exactly how to set up RetroShare, what to do, how to use it. It's really well done. I'm very impressed. In fact, I might even put it up on my YouTube channel just so people can check it out if Aaron wants that. So anyway, but that's available. There's a link in the show notes to check that out. I recommend checking out that that video if you want to know how to get on board with RetroShare. He's really doing, just great work as far as that goes. And certainly I need to do a little bit of stepping up myself. But anyway, love RetroShare. That's definitely an area where I would love to see. Well, I'd love to see the whole Sovereign Tech community get there, but I just can't imagine it. I mean, poor RetroShare. Like I look at their Twitter account. I don't even think they have like 1,000 Twitter followers. It's pretty bad. In fact, let me look it up here quick. Let's see. Let's go to RetroShare. There we go. Of course, I'm following them. RetroShare Dev Team. Okay, so they have 1,600. That's kind of sad because it's such a great fucking technology. It's such a great piece of software. Oh, heartbreaking. Well, anyway, we'll talk. While we're talking about great software, let's get into it. There was another question, and this question came up. This is one of the ones from the Facebook group. This came up after I did this week. In fact, I think it was yesterday that I released, so that would have been the 11th, July 11th. I released my review of the Castlevania series, anime series that Netflix produced and put out there just over the weekend. Of course, I had been long waiting for it. I had shared about it some time ago when the first trailer hit. And as I said in the episode, now you're going to want to listen to the episode because we cover a lot of ground, talk about a lot of different shit, okay? But, this is, first off, the anime series is a masterpiece, but also that this is one of the greatest franchises of all time. As far as video games go and otherwise, there's been comic books. There was a comic book in 2005 for Castlevania that was pretty cool too. But in it, I talked about what my favorite Castlevania games were. You'll have to listen to find out exactly what all those were. But we talked about how, Castlevania, the Netflix series is based off of Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse, which is, considered one of the greatest NES games, the original Nintendo NES games of all time. It easily sits in either a top 5 or a top 10 list with no problem. And nobody argues about it because it is such a groundbreaking game. And of course, the first Castlevania game equally gets, a lot of great press. Simon's Quest was pretty good too, So the question is that after they heard my review, after they listened to my Castlevania episode, they're like, holy shit, I got to play these. What's the best emulator, to play these games on? So I would assume you're talking about the answer shifts based upon what platform really we're talking about. But I'm going to guess if you're wanting to game, I don't know. I'm just guessing it's a Windows machine. And in fact, this software is available kind of cross-platform as well. And so the best NES emulator, and I'm going to give you another emulator in a second, but the best, original Nintendo emulator, in my opinion, I don't know how the fuck to pronounce this. It's FCEUX, and the link is in the show notes for it. FCEUX.com is the website to find it. And the nice thing about, I don't know, I've called it FUSUX. I don't even, it stands for like family. I think it stands for Famicom Emulator, something like that. But regardless of what it stands for, it is, in my opinion, it's probably the best one going. I think the last version, one of the problems with, or not a problem, but one of the things with a lot of these emulators is that they seem to have a very short development life. Not all of them. Some of them, like Dolphin, are developed regularly, where there's new releases almost every couple weeks. New version releases. The last version, I think, of all ironies, almost a year ago to the day, was in July of last year. For FCEUX. But the nice thing about FCEUX is that it's not just a Nintendo, an NES emulator. It also emulates the Famicom Disk System, which, if you remember some time ago on a Game Talk, kind of the last run of Game Talk that we had on Sovereign Tech Prime episodes, we talked about how finally somebody translated and put together, including with the radio shows or whatever. They weren't technically radio, but some of the Zelda games that came out for the Famicom Disk System that most people in America have never played. Because the Famicom Disk System is a completely different, it was like a computer made by Nintendo. It was a totally different setup, could connect to satellite. There's really cool shit that you could do with it, but it was mainly only in Japan. So the nice thing about FCEUX is that it will emulate those as well, which I think is really cool. I could probably do a whole episode on the best emulators for each system, and based upon what operating system you also happen to be running, I could maybe, I'll write that down to line that up to talk about that, but that would take a little longer, and some of the things I feel kind of a need to to really like do an update about, because some of the ones I've been using, they haven't had a new version in years, and so maybe there's something better around, and I just I haven't necessarily checked it out. So I'll make that something for the future. But anyway, FCEUX is again phenomenal. That's definitely the way to go as far as what Nintendo NES particularly emulator to use. Now I will give you what my favorite Castlevania game was or is for the Game Boy Advance, called Area of Sorrow, and I'll let you know that one. Now, Area of Sorrow, so you're going to want to play that on again on a Game Boy Advance emulator. That's not going to be it's not an NES game. In the Game Boy Advance Castlevania games in general, kind of like I said in that review of the Netflix series, are by many people are considered the greatest Castlevania games ever made, particularly like Circle of the Moon and Harmony of Dissonance, and even Area of Sorrow's sequel, Dawn of Sorrow. I mean, the style was getting a little long in the tooth and maybe a little repetitive for some people, but I love all four of those games particularly. But Area of Sorrow, which is a Castlevania game that takes place in the future, takes place in 2035 instead of 600, 400, 500 years ago, whatever. So that's my favorite one. And if you want a great Game Boy Advance emulator, what you want to go with, it's just called Visual Boy Advance, and I think the latest version that's still in production is Visual Boy Advance M. It's like -M, and I put a link in the show notes to help you find that. But that's one where it hasn't been updated in forever, but it's already kind of perfect. Like I don't know how much really to add on to it, necessarily. But anyway. So lots of cool stuff to check out with that. And of course, Visual Boy Advance can play Game Boy Color and original Game Boy games as well. And there's a large Castlevania catalog for both of those previous systems as well, for the original Game Boy and for Game Boy Color. So you'll want to jump on those as well, when you get Visual Boy Advance. So that's a great way to get started on the inimitable and formidable, Castlevania franchise. Okay, so let's move on to another question here. How are we doing on time? Oh man, we're blazing. Oh, this is good. Okay, so what Linux? This is a question from the Patreon community. What Linux would you recommend to dual boot with Windows 10? I am a game developer, so I was hoping for some speed increase with Blender and Substance Painter. Yeah, so to dual boot with Windows 10, it really comes down to sort of what Linux version has the best kind of instructions, really, I think, or the best process of dual booting with Windows 10. And that answer is really the same answer that it's been for over a decade, that being Ubuntu. I would run Ubuntu. If you want to get into different flavors of Ubuntu, I think however people want to pronounce it, Xubuntu, Xubuntu, which uses the crossface, or XFCE, GUI, you're a game developer, you know what GUI is. So you want to generally stick with Ubuntu, because Ubuntu, as I've said, has such a great community around it, like support community, and it's so well documented how to do so many of the basic little things in Ubuntu that if you're a new Linux user, I mean, that's a real advantage. And Ubuntu's getting better. Like Ubuntu's kind of getting back into shape, because for a while Ubuntu, I think, was really trying to take over the world. And I mean, it kind of already is, just because open source is eating everything, thankfully. But Ubuntu was trying to become, like a major, enterprise, consumer, government. Like they wanted to be, they're trying to follow the old path of Microsoft, and it didn't end up working out well for them. So they're sort of, refocusing on their strengths and what works for them and what they've been doing, what originally gave them such a huge community in the first place. So I think Ubuntu is probably the best way to go with that as far as gaming. Also because if you're a game developer, most game platforms will support Ubuntu specifically in varying ways. Like you can get the Steam client for Ubuntu. I know you can kind of port it to Fedora as well. And then there's Linux Mint, which a lot of people like because it reminds them so much of Windows. But yeah, I think just going with raw Ubuntu, again, because of the community that can really support you and help you out. There's so many users of it. That's really the way to go in my opinion. with that. So yeah, dual booting with Windows 10. Yeah, you want to rock Ubuntu. And the fun thing is now with Windows 10, boy, if you want to get into you can install on Windows 10 Pro, right? You can put in Bash, as kind of your power user command line. That's awesome, so you can take your Ubuntu skills into Windows really now. You can even, so Ubuntu was released for Windows 10, so you can sort of run it within it, but that's kind of like a virtual machine situation. That's not really a dual boot. So yeah, just go with Ubuntu, because it really makes the setup of dual booting with Windows very simple. There were concerns for a while, where because of UEFI, UEFI, instead of replacing the stock BIOS that everybody's been they were used to for 20, 25 years, 30 years. There was the concern that it was keeping, it was like there was a security feature, quote unquote feature, that would lock down your operating system, that would keep malware, from affecting you before you got to the operating system, which is where the bulk of a computer's security suite, really resides, particularly with Windows computers, of course, with Windows Defender. And there was a concern that you wouldn't be able to actually put Ubuntu onto, you wouldn't be able to dual boot anymore. But fortunately, a lot of those concerns have been resolved. And obviously, if you have an older computer, it's not even a question. If you're still using a BIOS, you're fine. So yeah, get used to Ubuntu. The other nice thing with Ubuntu is that if you ever get a Chromebook or, some really inexpensive hardware, Ubuntu's nice for dual booting with a whole lot of operating systems. Let's just put it that way. So I think that's kind of the thing to get used to if you want to take advantage of some of the speed. Now, there's things you might want to do in Ubuntu, like turning down a lot of the graphical, horseshit that goes on there. But Ubuntu has a low graphics mode that I think would be beneficial for people to turn on, because all of the bells and whistles that Ubuntu shows off, that's part of the reason I think that people were walking away from Ubuntu in general and either installing Ubuntu Mate, which is a popular version of Ubuntu, or why they were going to maybe Linux Mint or even Fedora, was because Ubuntu was trying to make everything very flashy, and it was killing older hardware, which, what the fuck's the point? There's a point to Linux without having older hardware. But one of the beauties of Linux is that it, effectively you could try and run it on anything, and Ubuntu is getting away from that philosophy, and that's a real pity. But they're getting back to it. So I think the version that actually comes out this November will be, or October, whatever the release date is, will end up going back to a more simplified user interface and getting rid of a lot of the Flash and all of that. Not Flash like as in Adobe Flash, but just a lot of the Flash, a lot of the Flare, not as in Ric Flair, woo, but getting rid of all that and just being, the very simple operating system that it always should have been and always should be. So yeah, go rock and roll with that. I've done some game developing within Ubuntu, and it's a very nice process. So I can certainly, appreciate that, not just with speed, but, overall with just access to tools and yeah, anyway, it's great. So, okay, let's see. This is one that we seem to go over a lot, and we've been going over quite a bit lately as well. Because everybody's freaking out about August. I was on the Tatiana show. Both the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy and I were on the Tatiana show this week. In fact, as of this recording, it's out today. So that would be, again, July 12th, 2017. That episode's out there. I'll be releasing it with some custom commentary probably on Friday. In the Sovereign Tech Patreon feed. So if you just want to wait for that, it's just a couple days away. But it was a fun episode. But anyway, we talked about how, look, we just want this, whatever the fuck the hard fork or soft fork or whatever the hell's going to happen with Bitcoin, let's just get it over with. Let's just do it and just try something, and then we can all move on. And if it fails, whatever. But anyway, people are still asking questions about Bitcoin. Obviously now it's very hot in the news. And so I know I had some new patrons. It's like 3 or 4 of them. So I was like, okay, well then we'll cover this. But this question comes up a lot. What to use for a Bitcoin wallet? And one of the people that recently messaged me about it, they said they had listened to my previous episodes about a Bitcoin wallet, but none of them were, they wondered if there was some kind of middle ground effectively. And I get it, because I'm not the biggest fan of hardware wallets. If I had to choose a hardware wallet, it would probably be Trezor. I talked about how, and I think some people have asked for a guide about how to do this as well. That's something for the future, like that's something I really don't want to get wrong. The guide being for having an old smartphone, and then that smartphone, like making it, like killing a lot of its radios, making it really dumb to where all it is like maybe running an implementation of Mycelium, or maybe Copay, maybe the Copay wallet, something like that. And then like, it only interacts via QR codes, and it works like a hard paper, like a hardware paper wallet almost. I have to write up a guide for how to go about that, but regardless, that's another one of my favorite options as far as hardware wallets go, because then you would do so much, because you would install like Lineage OS or even Replicant. You would install Replicant OS on it. That way, you knew you had totally open source. Nobody's really getting into it. I mean, it's a lot of work to do that sort of thing. As far as software wallets, I have always said that Armory is the absolute gold standard, but a lot of people might not want to use that because you have to download the entire Bitcoin blockchain to pretty much to run Armory the right way, as full-featured and beautiful as it is. Though some people also have, I've recommended to some people recently, some clients, and, they said, well, but if we lose the laptop with Armory on it, aren't we kind of screwed? I mean, there's degrees of backing up, but I understand that concern as well. And it is a little more of a technical wallet. So to answer the question of like, what's a great kind of middle ground setup where you're not using blockchain.info, or you're not using, any of these other very like Jax or any of these other very concerning wallets. But you're getting in a lot of security and some options. The thing that I actually recommend now to do as far as Bitcoin wallets go, especially if you're not like super tech savvy, and believe me, you don't have to be tech savvy to do what I'm about to describe, but it will give you a lot more security than you're going to get with just about any other wallet besides maybe Armory. But then also, you could, even if you had a hardware wallet like Trezor, you could also take advantage of Trezor for this. So what I recommend doing, okay, if you want like the easiest yet most secure setup that you can do with a Bitcoin wallet, let's break this down. And it comes down to really having, this really a new development in the tech world in general. And this new development is that we pretty much all have at least two computers now, or two devices, shall I say. What I mean by that is most people have a laptop or a desktop, something like that. And then they also have their smartphone, okay, whether it's Android or iOS, whatever. Most people have that set up. Now, that has allowed for a lot of very interesting ideas, including, say, Steve Gibson of Security Now. Steve Gibson's Squirrel, SQRL, which is a system designed for authentication and to get rid of passwords and all of this. It's a brilliant idea that I am totally, on board with and will be jumping on, the instant that it's finally released. So, this new paradigm really in computing, in personal computing, I guess more particularly, is that everybody really has two devices. And so now you could take advantage of the fact that you have two devices, right? And so this setup that I'm about to describe for a far more secure Bitcoin wallet requires you to use both your smartphone and your laptop or, your PC, whatever. So what you're going to do is you're going to use Copay. Now, the Copay wallet at copay.io is a beautiful little wallet. Very, very well done code, totally open source. You can check it out on GitHub, the whole thing. It is very nice for one thing. It was originally developed by BitPay, which BitPay is one of the, they're one of the largest Bitcoin companies in the world, right up there with like Coinbase, right? And BitPay, I actually, I understand the reservations and concerns about Coinbase. Like, I totally understand them. But BitPay is one I feel a little bit better about because let's just say I know the owner really enjoys his strip clubs. So I'll just boom, there it is. And also, there's just that organization does a whole lot of good in many, or at least helps fund a lot of good happening in the world, thanks to BitGive and some other things. So whatever. Anyway, so BitPay originally developed their own wallet, which was, I think, mainly for, to schlep off to like enterprise customers. And because of that, it was a simple wallet that allowed for multi-signature, multi-sig wallets. Okay, which means that you have multi-sig wallets means that for one Bitcoin wallet, you may need 2 to 3, 4, or 5, however many people you set up to verify a transaction within that wallet for it to go through. Okay, so this is great security. For example, say you had what they would call a 2 of 3 wallet. Okay, say you had yourself and your 2 business partners. Okay, you have like this triad business, online business or something, and you're using Bitcoin. What you could do is each one of you would have access to this Bitcoin wallet. Say this is like the company funds. And for you to do anything within the company, to maybe assuage embezzlement or something, getting spent on without being communicated, whatever, however that happens, you would need, because it's what they call a 2 of 3, as you would need 2 people of the 3 people for a transaction to be made with that Bitcoin wallet, to use the money in that Bitcoin wallet. You'd need 2 people to agree to it and for them both to quote unquote sign off on it, as in verify it on their, on their own software, on their wallet. In this case, it would have been the BitPay wallet. It's a brilliant idea. It's something that's been a part of Bitcoin for a long time. It just wasn't really until the BitPay wallet and its kind of open source derivative, not that the BitPay wallet isn't open source, but it's more open derivative version, which is CoPay, and kind of co-developed version called CoPay. That it became more mainstream, that more people were able to take advantage of it. So I fully support the CoPay wallet. I think it's a damn fine wallet, and it has all the right moves going for it. And it's completely cross-platform in what it's available for, which is really cool. So what we're going to do is, talking about the CoPay wallet, you're going to install 2 implementations of the CoPay wallet. Okay, now there's a couple ways that we can go about this. In fact, you could do it with one device, but I think I sort of feel like that kind of kills the point of the security. Okay, so you're going to go to copay.io. You're going to download, for, say you're using a Windows machine. Okay, you're going to download the Windows client from their website. Okay, and then you're going to open that up. It's going to go through, set up your wallet. It's going to, allow you to make a backup of the wallet. The backup's important. It's like a phrase that you use, okay, kind of like a brain wallet. That way, if anything ever happens to your laptop, you can back it up. That's another thing people were asking me about in emails, is how do we go about backing the stuff up? This is about the best implementation you can do that allows for some degree of backing up, okay? So you're gonna make sure you have the backup. You'll go through the instructions. It walks you right through the installation process as soon as you open the CoPay wallet after you install it. So this is as easy as it can possibly get. There's no point to me explaining it here. So you're going to set that up. Then it'll create what will be called your personal wallet. Now you can create more wallets within CoPay, within the CoPay software itself. So you're going to create another CoPay wallet. And then it's going to give you options of what kind do you want to make. Do you want to make another personal wallet? Do you want to import a wallet? What you're going to do is you want to create a shared wallet. Okay, and just stick with me here to understand what's happening. So you create that shared wallet on your desktop. Then it's going to say, after you create it, it's going to say, okay, who do you want to share this with? Because it needs to be shared. And so I'm getting ahead of myself. You want to set up first, when you're creating the shared wallet, it's going to tell you how many people that you want to share it with and how many confirmations you need, as in how, it's multi-signature, how many people, the multi, and then how many signatures do you need, to complete it. Like, because again, if you wanted it to be like 4 or 5 people, but you only needed a majority, as in 3 of the people to sign off on it, you would make it 5 of 3. Okay. So what you're actually going to create here is 2 of 2. And the 2 people is really just going to be your 2 devices, your computer and your smartphone. Or I guess it could be another computer. I mean, the bottom line is it needs to be 2 devices. I only say computer and smartphone because that's what most people have. So you'll create this 2 of 2. Then you'll share it, and it'll ask you who's the second person you want to share with. And you are going to install, say on your smartphone, you will install the CoPay, which they have it for, hell, they even have it for Windows Store, or for Windows Phone. So you can install on Windows Phone too. Believe me, whatever phone you got, the smartphone you have, they're going to hook you up. So install it, say on your Android phone, and then you will, as you're setting up that wallet on your Android phone, what you'll do is you'll, after you create, and you're making a separate account on the smartphone, understand this, you're creating 2 completely separate wallets that are going to have access to one shared wallet. Okay, if you have questions on this, just message me through Patreon or in my email, and I'll hook you up, or I'll try and clarify it for you. So you make a completely separate wallet. You're going to have to give these wallets different names. Make them ridiculous. One of them can be you. The other, say, the wallet on your smartphone could be Green Ranger. I don't care. And then once that wallet is created, and it's pretty much the same process you went through on your desktop. Once that wallet's created, you're going to scan. It'll be a QR code that will allow you to share it. That will allow you to share the wallet that you created on your desktop, the shared wallet, not the personal wallet, but the shared wallet. You're going to scan the QR code, or you're on your smartphone. You're going to go to Import Wallet, and there it will give you the option to scan the QR code, and then that will become the 2 of 2. That'll become the second signature for your multi-signature wallet. Okay, and then they'll both have a shared wallet. Now, how does this work going forward for you? Well, what's going to happen is that now anytime, and there's one other feature I'm going to ask you, to set up, but we'll get to that in a second. Anytime you want to, it won't be a problem to receive funds, but anytime you want to send funds or spend funds from your Bitcoin, from your CoPay Bitcoin wallet, you're going to have to, you'll do it on one of your devices. You could do it on your smartphone, or you could do it on your desktop. But after you tell it to send, say, I don't know, 0.0005 Bitcoin to somebody, you'll have to verify that on your second device, whichever one that happens to be. So if you send it from your PC, you're going to get a notification on your phone that says, hey, you need to verify this send, and then you'll verify it on your phone. Vice versa, same thing will happen. This means that, look, if somebody steals your laptop, they don't have access. Okay, they can't do anything with your funds. Even if they crack into your CoPay wallet, they can't do anything with it. All right, if somebody steals your phone, they can't do anything without your laptop. If somebody steals both, wallets are still, well, anyway, at least on your desktop, the wallet is still password protected. Okay, now the other thing that you can do is, and I talked about doing this with the Jax wallet as well, which works a little differently, but the other thing you can do is in the advanced features, and it's up to you which one you want to do this on. Okay, or if you want to do it on both of them, but at least do it on one of them. You can set up a PIN code that the software will ask for in CoPay whenever you want to do a spend. So that's like quadruple protection. Okay, so this is, it's not going to be the easiest thing in the world to be able to, this is cold storage here. This isn't necessarily a hot wallet situation. Okay, it's not going to be the easiest thing in the world to send money from this, but that's the point. So this is really like the easiest and yet really fucking secure way, without requiring, and this way, if you have other people that you trust, fine, but I kind of like the old Security Now saying of TNO, trust no one. But this allows you to take advantage of multi-signature wallets without having other people involved, without having to trust any other party. And so I think that this is probably the best, in between, getting a hardware wallet or using Armory or, going crazy like with with your own little, purpose-built smartphone device that has maybe mycelium or something on it. This is the way to go, in my opinion. And understand, you're backing up both wallets, the wallet on your smartphone as well as the wallet, and you're going to have those backup phrases. You're going to want to keep those safe somehow. Either have them on a piece of paper and pop them in a safe, laminate that piece of paper, some shit, okay? Or, unfortunately you can't choose the words. Otherwise, I think it would be great if you could just use a book and use the words from the book, but it kind of generates the brain wallet for you, the passcodes for you. Or, if you want to, and this is up to you, if you want to secure it in LastPass has like that secure note option. We're going to be talking about password managers on Sovereign Tech Prime this week, so you'll understand maybe why I'm mentioning LastPass right now. But anyway, but that's another option, is that you could leave it in some kind of, or maybe if you're using like VeraCrypt and you have some encrypted text files where you could save this, but effectively meaning that you'll at least have some kind of backup to where you could regenerate both wallets, even if you did lose all of your, even if somebody stole both of your devices. As long as you have access to those two brain wallets, the one from your smartphone or, the one from both of your devices that you set up copay on, you're good. So I think that's a really, really, for the average person and maybe even the not so average person, that's like the most secure Bitcoin wallet I think you can set up with relative ease without getting too crazy. So that's my recommendation on that, and I appreciate you asking about it. That's the kind of info that you're just going to have to we have to go over again and update really all the time. So, all right. I hope that answers that. Again, if you have any technical questions on that, or if you have concerns, let me know. I know maybe one concern, I'll bring this up quickly, that a lot of people have is that, what if BitPay goes out of business? What if development stops on the copay wallet, or the development team runs away or something like that? It's completely open source. Copay, that's the only reason I recommend it. You have control in every step of the way. You have control over your wallet with copay. Meaning that, keys aren't being stored anywhere funny, there's no cloud bullshit going on really. It's just you have control. Okay. And because it's all open source, another dev team could just pick up where the last one left off. So it's really, having concerns about, what if this wallet shuts down or something like that. Because of copay, again, because of its popularity as well as its open source nature, I really don't see that as very much as a concern. So anyway, let's move on to something else here. Okay, so here's another bit of a tech question. Then honestly, we do have some philosophy and history to get into here. Let's see. On one of your recent episodes, you mentioned the dangers of PDF files. What measures can be taken to download PDFs but ensure they are not laced with malicious code? Okay, so there's not a whole lot of measures you can do to make sure that a PDF doesn't have some kind of malicious code, like when interacting with kind of the PDF or the download directly or something like that. That you just can't. The best thing you can do is just have the best software to read the PDF, to have a secure piece of software to read the PDF. One of the best things really that you can do is if you're using Chrome or Opera specifically. You can, with Opera, Opera and Chrome more so really, and you could be using Chromium as well. It would kind of give you the same advantage, because I hate to recommend that people use Chrome. Chrome is sandboxed, okay? So, and this is also true actually for Microsoft Edge. So Microsoft Edge would also be another viable option if you're running a Windows computer, which, keep that in mind, a lot of the malicious capabilities of a PDF really only affect Windows. That's not only, but largely that's where the problems have been, and that's where the concerns are. So if you open PDF files with Microsoft Edge, which Microsoft Edge can read anything now. It can read an EPUB. I don't think it can do CBRs and CBZs. There's no reason that it shouldn't be able to, because they're just zip files, just like an EPUB. But PDFs, of course, again, those are very different because they can have active content. So you want to use a really dumb either sandboxed or really dumb PDF reader. That's the real solution here. You can't do much about downloading them and them having malicious content. You can only mitigate it by having a reader that won't take advantage or will control the active content within the PDF itself. There's a couple of challenges with this, which I'll describe in a second, but anyway, so mainly, more or less, if you use just about any PDF reader besides Adobe Acrobat, you'll be fine. The challenge here is that with Adobe Acrobat, that's sort of the only way you can do electronic signature on a PDF, which that might be a problem. But in that case, I hope if you're putting an electronic signature on a PDF, that's probably some kind of legal document. I sure as fuck hope you know exactly what you're downloading and who you're downloading that from, because that's a very serious piece of business, in our world today. I wish contracts weren't, but they are right now. So, so keep that in mind. That really, I mean, what I would do in those cases, if you know you have to electronically sign a document, I would install Adobe Acrobat for that singular fucking PDF, and then I would uninstall Adobe Acrobat instantly as soon as I was done with that. And if I had, if a year later or a couple months later or a couple days later, I have to sign another PDF electronically, I would just reinstall and then uninstall again. That's really it. Just Adobe Acrobat is just it's too many features for something as simple as, look, I just want to read this fucking PDF, right? And if you're into like PDF creation, I know there's other ones. What is there, SodaMaker PDF or something like that? There's other options. Adobe software is just well, if you have to use Photoshop, you know who you are, and nothing, and there's no argument about it. Okay, but the rest of Adobe's software is kind of a little over or not just kind of, it's over the top. It has far too many features. It doesn't make any goddamn sense. Unless you've been using this stuff for eons, don't touch it. So for Windows and for some other platforms, you have what's called Sumatra PDF, which is another option where it's a very basic, in fact, it's a great piece of software overall, developed by someone who I know is just a great guy. It's a one-person team there. And Sumatra PDF is another thing where it will read anything. But in this case, I mean it. It will read MOBI files. I think it reads AZW3 files. It'll read EPUBs. It reads PDFs. It'll read CBZ files. You can read comic books with it. It'll read CBR files. It reads all that different stuff. But it's a very dumb piece of software. And not dumb as an insult or stupid. Dumb as in it doesn't have a lot of features. So the active content can't really take advantage when you open up a PDF with it. The active content can't do anything to the rest of the operating system because, like the feature to fill in forms, say, on a PDF aren't there. So it can't even activate the active content. So Sumatra PDF is a great solution. I put a link in the show notes for that, particularly if you have Windows, because again, where this is a concern about malicious PDFs is mainly on Windows. Not only, but mainly. So the other thing, again, is to just open it within web browsers, open it within Microsoft Edge, open it within Chrome or Opera, where they have their own PDF readers built in. Chrome and Edge in particular, because they are so sandboxed that, even if there is some kind of malicious active content, it's not going to go anywhere else. So that's sort of my solutions for that. There are concerns that opening PDFs within Firefox can actually spread that malicious content. So don't do it with Firefox. There's a reason I didn't mention Firefox. When I say open it in your web browser, I'm talking about a very, very specific, generally either Edge or Chrome or Chromium, maybe Opera, but that's kind of an open-ended question. Opera uses the same engine and a lot of the same features as Google Chrome. So that's why, sometimes it kind of works, sometimes it doesn't. But like Opera is missing some things. Like, so Google Chrome has Pepper Flash, it's talking about Adobe Flash. Pepper Flash, which keeps Flash content from spreading to the, potentially spreading some kind of malicious, some kind of malware or whatever else to the rest of your computer. As to where Opera does not have Pepper Flash. So there's features here and there where Opera's missing some of it. That's why I usually mention Opera separately, because what Google Chrome can do does not, even as much as Opera's based on Chrome, does not necessarily mean that Opera can do it. And that actually goes both ways, but whatever. So those are my recommendations. Either open it in Edge or Chrome, or use Sumatra PDF. And if it's something that's some kind of legal document that you have to interact with and you have to do an e-signature, go ahead and install Adobe Acrobat Reader, but then instantly uninstall Adobe Acrobat Reader for the future, and just install it and uninstall it as you need it. So okay, there's all of that. Let's get into. Oh boy. Okay, this is going to be a big subject. So I had somebody ask, and this is also from, it was actually from a book selfie thread that we had in the Sovereign Tech Facebook, or Sovereign Tech Uncensored Facebook group. And somebody shared that they were reading Osho. Osho, that name might sound familiar to some people. Some people might have seen various parts of the internet, seen that, oh, well, this is actually, wow, what a great quote. That's beautiful. Like it's something about love or friendship or something like this. In fact, let me read some of the Osho quotes that I like. But anyway, the person asked me to talk about Osho, so I will, and I think it's important. Maybe this person asked me for a reason, and we'll talk about that in a second. But here's an Osho quote for you. If you love a flower, don't pick it up, because if you pick it up, it dies, and it ceases to be what you love. So if you love a flower, let it be. Love is not about possession. Love is about appreciation. And that's fantastic. Like, I wouldn't argue with that at all, and it's pretty much saying, don't try changing people. Don't try to possess another person. Don't try to control another person. Just love them and love them as they are. That's fantastic relationship advice right there. Let's see. Here's another one. Experience life in all possible ways. Good, bad, bitter, sweet, dark, light, summer, winter. Experience all the dualities. Don't be afraid of experience, because the more experience you have, the more mature you become. Here's a short one. Be. Don't try to become. I mean, there's lots of these that are right on. How about this one? Friendship is the purest love. It is the highest form of love, where nothing is asked for, no condition, where one simply enjoys giving. Beautiful. I mean, there's just a lot. I mean, then there's kind of some crazy stuff like here. Be realistic. Plan for a miracle. Well, But anyway, there's a lot of beautiful quotes out there, and I know a lot of people have read his work or are reading his work or are digging deep into it. One of the guys, a totally cool guy, was sharing, a book that he read about, or he shared some Osho books that he got in. And so that, that kind of sparked a lot of this. And I said, oh yeah, Osho has some of my favorite quotes on love. Now, he doesn't have my favorite quote on love. That belongs to Robert Heinlein. But that's another story. So Osho would kind of initially, he'd have a different name. He would really be mainly known as Osho and mainly talked about as Osho very late in his life. This is a guy, he died in 1990. He wasn't even 60. I mean, so kind of a young man. And originally he'd be best known as Rajneesh. Or Ranish, maybe it's Ranish. I've never heard. I've only known him as Osho, so maybe I'm saying that wrong. But I'm going to guess it's Ranish. And he started what would become the Ranish movement, which is a very, very controversial socio-political organization. And oh yes, it would become political. And that's where it's worth talking about this, worth digging deeper into this. So Osho would end up, I won't call him Ranish any longer. So Osho would end up becoming quite the big deal. He would end up with quite a following in India itself. And in India, he would end up kind of becoming a political enemy to everybody that was in charge in India at the time. And this would have been, I guess, maybe like in the 70s or something like this, maybe earlier than that. But he would, when he really kind of becomes prominent and when people start to really hear about it, I mean, in my opinion, he created a cult. And he was, originally he kind of called it this religion, the Ranish movement, he called it the religionless religion. Eventually, later on in his life in the 80s, he would start saying that, he was not a religious teacher at all, even though before, again, he was, kind of schlepping it out as a religionless religion, which is kind of funny. But regardless, he was a very polarizing figure in India, and he would eventually move to the United States and become an even more polarizing figure for varying reasons. Now, he would end up with a woman would end up joining an American woman, and her husband. Her name would be, it wasn't originally Sheila Silverman, but Sheila Silverman would be her, that's her married name. And her husband ended up becoming kind of muckety mucks, big muckety mucks in the Ranish movement, and they would get very close to Osho. There is a time frame where when they end up kind of the whole Ranish movement, it's a cult. This cult moves to Oregon. Okay. And in Oregon, there's a time frame where whatever was happening, I don't know if he was really sick or just health problems, whatever. But this woman, Sheila Silverman, who she changes her name to Ma Anand Sheila, she becomes kind of the voice for this entire movement, which ends up, making up this commune, in Oregon. And there's a point where Osho says, yeah, whatever Sheila says is me saying it, blah, blah, blah. Some very, to kind of like take over, again, the same problems that we're having. Like I said, this is a socio-political cult. Okay. They get involved in politics. For what was happening in Oregon, or with all of them in Oregon, they started trying to do similar to what they did in India, where they're trying to take over the politics. And there is what ends up becoming really the very first bioterror attack, quote unquote bioterror attack, in the United States itself, committed against citizens of the United States. And it's done by Osho's cult. Now, this is in 84. Okay. It was the 84 Ranishi bioterror attack, something like this. And what they were doing, they were spreading salmonella in, I think it was like 10 restaurants in in Oregon. And it ended up giving food poisoning. I don't know that anybody died, but it ended up giving food poisoning to some odd 800 people, almost 1,000 people. And the idea is that they would give people food poisoning, not that they wanted to kill anybody necessarily, but they wanted to give people food poisoning to where they couldn't get out and vote. And so all of the people from Osho's commune could get out there and vote and get the people in office that they want to get into office. So like, this is really, this is, like medieval style, political attacks here, right? I mean, this is poisoning. This is almost assassination. And those charges come up too, that apparently Sheila tried to assassinate Osho's physician. And there's varying reasons around all of this different shit. Anyway, this cult starts really making moves and doing, genuinely unethical shit, regardless if you're into politics or not. And it comes down the line that, Sheila starts to, or at least this is kind of how the theory goes, is that Sheila is really becoming more prominent than Osho, because Osho's been silent, well, supposedly silent, and Osho's kind of been out of the public scene. Osho comes out and says, oh, I have all this dirt on Sheila, and hands it over to the authorities in Oregon and the federal, U.S. federal authorities, saying, look, she's tried to kill people. She did this bioterror attack. She did all this different stuff. And really it was a bid because, one can guess, is that Sheila wouldn't step down from her position of power that she garnered for herself. And so at first, apparently the authorities didn't take it very seriously, but then eventually they looked into it and they said, oh, holy shit, actually all of this stuff did happen. Now, it's kind of hard to believe. One has to wonder, like, was Osho really not behind some of this shit as well, like killing his physician or the bioterror attacks of 84, yeah. I kind of want to, never mind. I'm not going there. Okay. So yeah, in 84, you have that bioterror attack. We'll just call it, because that's what it's popularly known as. That's what we'll call that. Then you have, all these other things that happen. I mean, was he behind them as well? Yeah, probably. I don't see why not. Like, it's all about his cult gaining power in Oregon, and then, probably, after Oregon, the world. But he sets up Sheila as the fall guy, it seems. Or maybe it was just her, who knows. So she ends up doing jail time, gets out on parole. I think she's like in Switzerland now or something like this. She remarries a bunch of times. Of course, Osho again died, at the age of 58 in 1990. But Osho sort of starts to change things up a little bit after that. And I don't know if Osho knew that he was going to be dying soon or what was going on, but he really tries hard to make his message a lot more palatable, it seems, on a broader scale within the United States. I mean, and it got to the point where, like, Osho, I think Osho and all, like, I think they were told you can't even be in the U.S. And there's some, I don't know how many countries that they weren't allowed to, visit, live in, anything like that. I mean, that's how serious this cult got. And so, he starts to, he says like, oh, I'm not really, I'm not a religious teacher at all, even though before he said his movement was a religionless religion, but it was still a religion. So he's still, calling himself a religious teacher, but he changes that narrative, and the narrative starts to really soften down a bit. Not to say some ugly shit still isn't happening, okay, within all this. And I mean, yes, there is the absolute irony of what's going on here. I read to you those beautiful quotes about love. Look, whether Osho was involved or not, or however that shaped up, or maybe Sheila had like a message of violence, which you don't really see anywhere. That doesn't match up with those quotes about love and all of this different stuff, because you're giving people salmonella, you're, attempting assassinations. I mean, it's crazy. So Osho's not a good guy. Like, let's just break that down. He's not a good guy. He tried very hard after Sheila was arrested and taken away. There's book burnings that occur where he's getting rid of what he considers to be like the last vestiges of Sheila's, blasphemous message and all this stuff. For a guy that's not a religious teacher, certainly doing a lot of religious actions, I would say. But he gets rid of all of this. And again, like a lot of these books are very popular now. In fact, Osho's more popular now as far as like being well read, or, as far as being read and consumed, than he ever was. I mean, certainly people in the 80s knew about, the Ranishi cult, or the Ranishi, bioterror attack and all this. So, yeah. Okay. So to talk about Osho, like his works, I've read some of the books. There's some nice things. There's some great things within a lot of that. It is still kind of new agey, still mysticism and all that, which I buy. I don't buy into just a minute of any of that kind of shit. I'll tell you, because I've heard this quite a bit lately. I remember in the book, the book We, or no, not hYAgrPmzweANQVUs work. This would be in Ayn Rand's works. Let's see, particular, what was it? Not We the Living, the one after that. Shit. Boy, that's, Anthem. Jeez, give me a second. Anthem, which is really a sequel to Atlas Shrugged. I think it's an Anthem where she gives that great screed. I remember it from her book, For the New Intellectual, which is like a compilation of kind of the greatest hits from her books, blah, blah, blah. She gives that whole screed about how like we need to kill, or not we, but humanity needs to kill the word we, because we is like the ultimate in blasphemy. It's the ultimate, problem. And I can kind of appreciate what she's saying there, because certainly I'm all about hyper individualism. I mean, all the way, that's why I'm an egoist. But there's another word I think that maybe needs to be looked at with as much skepticism, vitriol, and, maybe needs to be taken to the fire. And that other word is spirituality, or spiritual. That should never be used in any kind of positive sense, in my opinion. And I know there's a lot of people, what's his name, Sam Harris, who's big on this, on that kind of horse shit and everything. I get very concerned when even atheists start using the word spiritual to describe something without caveats, where they try to redefine spirituality, or they try to redefine spiritual or something. That's a terrifying notion to me, because those same people, well, anyway, that's my thoughts on that. I don't care for that word. I think that word should just go, as I say often, go the way of the dodo. So boy, where was I with that? Yeah. So within Osho's works, I guess that's where I'm going with this. There's a lot of new agey shit. That doesn't mean you can't take great things from it. For example, with like nonviolent communication. Okay. In nonviolent communication, which is something I am also a big fan of. Marshall Rosenberg, the guy who created nonviolent, or, the guy who came up with, more or less, I mean, there's other different versions of it, I guess, out there, kind of like, William Ury and Roger Fisher's work with BATNA and all that. With nonviolent communication, there is this concept known as the benevolent divine energy, the BDE, okay? And Marshall Rosenberg said that nonviolent communication was almost a way of like accessing and nourishing this benevolent divine energy. Never goes into a huge description of what exactly benevolent divine energy is. It's just this kind of like woo-woo spiritual concept, which is crap. But that doesn't mean that everything else that was said about nonviolent communication isn't eminently useful, isn't infinitely useful, which I think it is. So kind of like with Osho, yep, read his books, but be very cautious. This is a guy, this was not just to use the conventionalism, this was not a good person. Like not at all. And this is a person that did not practice what they preached. Not really. I remember investigators at the time, like particularly with all the stuff that was brought out that's Osho was blaming on Sheila. They all said, yeah, we're pretty sure he was more involved than he is, but we just don't have enough evidence to indict him. Not that I want, court systems, blah, 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 and blah, 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 I just, rubbery. Okay. But I have no reason really not to believe that Osho wasn't involved in, these really bioterror attacks and assassination attempts and much more. In fact, what he did to Sheila really goes against almost everything he wrote about love and friendship and things like this. I mean, it's very, very odd. So yeah, there's a lot of nice things to glean from Osho, but boy, keep it at arm's length and understand that, don't venerate the man because there is little worth venerating. Even though I do, really appreciate, again, a lot of his quotes on love. I mean, they are spot fucking on, just like with Marshall Rosenberg, speaking of the guy that, the guy that created nonviolent communication, he died a couple of years ago, and at his funeral, and after his funeral, you heard like crazy stories that this guy wasn't really living the most ethical life either. So just maybe the best thing to walk away from this is, take what's useful from whatever you happen to have in your hands or before your eyes, but just don't venerate these people. Don't create heroes. I could get into a whole side subject about Chelsea Manning, where, she came out in support of UBI, of universal basic income, and of, some pretty crazy taxation and all that stuff. Look, none of these people are perfect. I'm not perfect. And hell, I always tell you guys, look, don't call me a thought leader. Don't put me up in any kind of lights in your brain or anything. Like no. I don't want to be a hero. I don't want any of that kind of shit. Not even close. And don't put anybody else in those positions either. There's nothing wrong with having heroes, but just understand that everybody's flawed and that you don't take everything. All right. So a hero of mine here, for example, William Shatner. William Shatner is actually going to be at Freedom Fest. I can't believe that. But anyway, absolute hero of mine. Am I going to listen to him about politics? Not really. I know some of his political stances and I think they're crazy. So, again, even somebody who I has done so much for me in my life, who I, would love to call a friend. I don't know him like that. I'm just saying, I wish I could, I wish I had that in my life. I'd love to talk to every day. I'd let you blah, 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 blah. I still know not to take everything they say, or to put them up as like, okay, no, this is, everybody should be into this. Everybody should listen to what he has to say and his word is God or something like that. I know not to do that. Okay. So just have a more cautious stance with heroes and always be cautious with, the books that you read and be careful because books are unique. They're not unique, but they're really good at this. Books make a huge case. Books are chapter by chapter can be a stacking of the deck. Okay. Which is a logical fallacy, right? Where, you accept this, but then you accept this, but because you already accepted all these other things, but it's all conditional upon you accepting everything, upon everything underneath it being true. Okay, books are really good at this because, and this is an advantage and a concern at the same time, because books can give you a whole multi-year story, but then also keep in mind that like books could be setting up conditions in your mind of what you accept first. You know, like, okay, yeah, once you accept this, then you accept this, then you accept this, then you accept this. As to where really, you know, all of that might only exist in that book. It might not, you know, parts of it might not really be in reality. So just be careful. You know, take the beautiful things, but be careful with, you know, some of the other shit. So yeah, don't venerate Osho, or at least be careful or caveat when you venerate Osho in any way. I'm not saying his books aren't worth reading. I think some of them are absolutely beautiful, but understand, not a good guy, and you may find some severe contradictions within those books. And certainly if you compare his books to his life, there's massive contradictions. And be very wary of the New Age, you know, woo-woo mysticism, you know, supernaturalism that can exist really, and it does within his books. Always be on the lookout for that, because obviously they're phantasms, they're spooks. So, love isn't a spook, not at all. Sterner fully, you know, admits to that. And in fact, I would argue that love is, I mean, totally a biological condition. But right, you know, I mean, it comes from your biology. Like it's you know, it's something you could actually measure. Okay, and that you could get to the source of. As to where a lot of other concepts in life, no, they're, you know, eventually you get to the point where, oh, that's a human creation. But yeah, a lot of the stuff, you know, certainly Osho relies heavily on a whole lot of spooks and phantasms, no doubt about that. So, okay, I think that's, wow, we're over an hour now. So, but I think we covered a lot of ground with this one. I do want to say, well, you know, I'm going to save this for later. I got a new phone. I got a Moto E4, which just came out in like this month, or came out, you know, end of July, like last day of July. So maybe I'll give a little bit of review on that maybe next week after I've been using it for a little while, because I just got it. But so far, I like this thing. It's very, very small, very light. I mean, there's sort of an ethos, I think, a philosophy to talk about with that. But anyway, Hangout will be tomorrow. If you are listening to this on release day July 12th, Hangout will be tomorrow, Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, or 1600 hours if you're saucy, Eastern, on July 13th. So, that's it for this. And then oh boy, I don't even want to say it. I'm just going to say, okay, new Sovereign Tech episode coming out this week. I already have it lined up, and I mean, this is going to be a doozy. We're going to get really, really, I mean, this is going to be a densely packed episode. It's going to be a hell of a time. So I will see you on the other side.